Welcome to the Future Diplomat Society.
Okay, welcome, Future Diplomats. I've already given this introduction, but just as a reminder, I am not a current diplomat. I do desire to be, but I am just like you. I am studying and preparing for the Foreign Service. A couple of announcements. We're going to be talking about Venezuela. That's a hot topic in the news right now, and also just around the world. People are watching this. Other countries are watching this. The social media has been crazy. I've just been scrolling through that today, and it's just crazy. A lot of conversation, a lot of opposition. Like, we're completely polar, and I say we, but the entire internet. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well, about how I believe the internet, the access to the internet and social media kind of affects diplomacy. I think the internet has brought us closer together, while at the same time it's made it almost weird for us to experience what we saw in the news. So, but that is what I've read, and that's what I've seen. A few announcements. We are going to be looking out for what the State Department does with the February test. I'm looking forward to taking it as well. The test dates are not announced. However, if you're in a different track, specifically security, their applications are open right now. So if you are, DSS? If you are DSS, your application is open right now, and your testing will begin. So good luck to you. And it actually makes me wonder if other testing may be open as well. So, but yeah, ours is not open standardly right now. Some announcements. We have our current session. These are the sessions for the rest of the month. So we have next week, I want to say the 12th, we have a session about, it's going to be led by Jennifer Soley, which we call Gen or Gen X. And that is going to be how the U.S. diplomacy sends ripple effects across the world. If you see me posting it on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on TikTok, it's because I'm very excited about it. I have personally worked with Jennifer on this topic, and I learned a lot from it. I'm really excited about it. And I also love how our session with Jennifer, before I even met Ambassador Tom, which is going to be happening on January 26th, is similar. It's different, but the diplomatic chain reactions is the conversation that we're going to be having on January 26th from retired U.S. Ambassador Tom Armbruster. But how U.S. diplomacy sends ripple effects across the world, I see that being a theme. And I feel like this is a very important topic for us, so I'm very grateful for that. We have our session today, which is Venezuela as a case study in U.S. foreign policy and power. But on January 13th, we will have our very first, and that's going to be on a Tuesday, we're going to have our very first language learning session taught by a live instructor, and she is a future diplomat. Her name is Huda, and I think I saw her on the call today. If you want to give a quick wave.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year.
So excited. Thank you, Huda. And we will, I'm just excited. We have other languages as well that we're working on, but definitely this has been near and dear. I'm learning Arabic. I am learning Korean, and it's really great to have someone, just right there who can help us. So definitely stay tuned. If you are not on the email list, make sure you're on the email list. So you can sign up for these sessions, January 12th, 13th, and 26th. On MLK Day, we will not have a session, so that will be our federal holiday that we're off, and we'll continue to follow those as we continue to go along. So yeah, I'm going to be a speaker today. Traditionally, and I'm so glad. I'm glad for Jennifer. I'm grateful for Huda. I'm grateful for Matthew and everyone else, Nate included, where I can just host But it's been a while, so I've been a little rusty apparently on being able to present. So bear with me as we get through tonight's session. So definitely welcome to tonight's session. And in this session, as Kristen, and I'm so glad you said it because it needed to be said. We're gonna make sure we're keeping opinions, out of this conversation. We're gonna look at the facts. So it is designed specifically to prepare you for the job knowledge section of the Foreign Service Officer test by teaching you how to analyze geopolitics in the way the exam expects you to analyze it. This is not a discussion whether recent events feel right or wrong. It is not an argument for or against any political position. The FSOT does not reward opinions. It rewards understanding of power, national interest, history, and patterns. And again, that's what we're going to talk about today. When major foreign policy events happen, especially those involving U.S. power, public discussion often focuses on morality, emotion, or immediate outcomes. The FSOT asks a different set of questions, and it asks whether you understand why states act, what strategic interests are involved, and what historical logic is being reused, and what history suggests about likely consequences. Tonight, we're going to be using Venezuela as a case study because it's not unique, it's familiar, and familiarity is exactly what the FSOT tests. So to understand why Venezuela matters to the United States, we begin with national interest. Sorry, I missed my spot on my post. Again, I'm rusty, y'all. Bear with me. From a political standpoint, Venezuela is relevant, primarily because of energy, geography, security, and global power competition. Venezuela holds one of the largest proven oil reserves in the world. On the FSOT, oil is never just an economic commodity. It is a strategic resource, and energy prices influence inflation, transportation costs, industrial production, and domestic political stability. Access to energy in the Western Hemisphere carries different risks and advantages than reliance on distant regions. And this is why energy repeatedly appears in job knowledge questions, regardless of which administration is in power. Geography is the second critical factor on the FSOT. Land does not mean conquest or ownership. It means location, proximity, access, and influence. Venezuela's Caribbean coastline places it near major maritime routes and within close proximity to the United States approaches. So geography does not change with leadership, transitions, or ideology. It is one of the most stable variables in foreign policy analysis, and the exam constantly rewards candidates who understand that geography shapes strategy over the long term. Security concerns further explain U.S. interests. Modern foreign policy often blends diplomacy, law enforcement, counter narcotics, and national security. When governance is weakened, criminal networks expand, and those networks rarely remain contained with borders. At that point, which might appear to be domestic issue inside another country becomes a foreign policy concern with direct implications for the United States. The FSOT increasingly reflects this overlap between security, crime, and diplomacy. I'm pretty sure this is where we are now. Okay, sorry. It's been a while. I'm navigating my own slides. Gosh, I've been spoiled by you guys. Venezuela also exists within a broader system of global competition. it interacts with relationships involving Russia, China, and other major powers. In a multipolar world, regional crisis often becomes arenas for influence rather than isolated bilateral disputes. The FSOT frequently frames questions around alignment, signaling in spheres of influence, because regional instability is rarely local in its consequences. This brings us to one of the most important FSOT skills, which is going to be pattern recognition. The exam constantly tests whether you can recognize when present-day events resemble historical behavior. One of the foundational frameworks for understanding the U.S. action in the Western Hemisphere is the Roosevelt Corollary. Articulated in the early 20th century, this doctrine asserted that instability in Latin America posed a direct threat to U.S. security and justified intervention to prevent external powers from gaining influence. While the language used today is different, the logic persists. So when instability occurs, it's close to U.S. borders. It is often framed as a security issue rather than a distant humanitarian concern. The FSOT does not test the morality of this doctrine. It tests whether you can recognize the strategic reasoning behind it. Another major pattern the FSOT expects you to recognize is the difference between removing a leader and stabilizing a state. Throughout the Cold War, the United States frequently supported actions aimed at weakening or removing leaders perceived as hostile and destabilizing. Awesome. Okay. While leader removal was often achievable, long-term stability proved far more difficult. States are complex systems built on institutions, legitimacy, and public acceptance. The FSOT repeatedly tests your understanding that political durability depends far more on institutions than on individuals. At this point in the lesson, it is important to ground these patterns in leadership history, because the FSOT frequently tests continuity across presidents and secretaries of state rather than isolated decisions. We begin with Theodore Roosevelt. Okay. Which, random fact, if you ever hear the word teddy bear, that's where it's from. Theodore Roosevelt, whose presidency formalized the idea that instability in the Western Hemisphere required U.S. action to protect security and influence. Roosevelt's approach emphasized preemption and proximity. On the FSOT, his era is tested not for its rhetoric, but for its logic. Nearby instability is treated as a direct threat. Somebody said something in the chat. Walk softly, carry a big stick. That is definitely Mr. Teddy. So during the Cold War, this logic involved under John F. Kennedy and Secretary of State Dean Rusk. Oh yeah, I'm here already. Great. The focus shifted toward ideological containment, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, where events such as the Cuban Missile Crisis reinforced the belief that the threats close to the United States borders demanded decisive response. The FSOT frequently draws from this period to test understanding of how ideology translated into security imperatives. Under Ronald Reagan, which I appreciate Nate for breaking down the Reagan era. I'm just going to touch it a bit. Under Ronald Reagan and Secretary of State George Shultz, U.S. policy emphasized strength, deterrence, and resistance to movements viewed as destabilizing. Although, the rhetoric differed from earlier decades, the strategic concern remained the same. Instability in the Western Hemisphere was unacceptable. The FSOT uses this era to test understanding of proxy conflicts and the limits of military and political leverage. A particularly relevant comparison for Venezuela comes from the administration of George H.W. Bush and Secretary of State James Baker. The removal of Manuel Noriega in Panama was framed as a response to criminal behavior, threats to U.S. personnel, and regional instability. Panama is often cited as a relatively successful case because the intervention was limited in scope, short in duration, and followed by rapid restoration of sovereignty. The FSOT frequently contrasts Panama with less successful interventions to test whether candidates understand why some actions stabilize while others don't. In the post-Cold War and post-9/11 era, legitimacy and perception became even more central. Under George W. Bush and Secretary of State Colin Powell, U.S. policy emphasized security and preemption, while also grappling with the long-term consequences of occupation. Powell's emphasis on clear objectives, legitimacy, and exit strategies is frequently referenced indirectly on the FSOT as a framework for understanding why some interventions falter over time. Across all of these administrations, one theme remains constant. U.S. foreign policy is shaped less by personalities than by enduring interest. So security, stability, access, and influence. Presidents and secretaries of state differ in style, but the patterns repeat. The FSOT expects you to see Venezuela not as an isolated incident, but as another moment where longstanding frameworks are applied to new context. This leads up to one of the most important concepts tested on the exam, and that is legitimacy. Legitimacy refers to whether a government is perceived as sovereign, independent, and accepted by its population. When leadership changes, when leadership change occurs under foreign military pressure, governments often struggle to gain legitimacy, regardless of their policies. Populations tend to view such governments as proxies, which fuels resistance and undermines stability. The FSOT repeatedly tests the idea that force can create control, but legitimacy creates durability. Resource politics complicate legitimacy further. When foreign involvement is closely associated with oil or other strategic assets, public perception often shifts from stabilization to exploitation. This pattern has appeared repeatedly in history and remains highly relevant today. The FSOT often tests this dynamic indirectly through questions about nationalism, backlash, or resistance movements. One of the most important modern differences, and one of the FSOT increasingly reflects, is the role of information. In earlier eras, governments exercised significant control of narratives. Today, social media and instant communication eliminates that control. Military operations, arrests, and asset seizures are visible in real time. Narratives form within minutes. This means that even legally justified actions can feel legitimate to global audiences, or feel illegitimate, to global audiences. Reputation costs are higher, faster, and harder to manage than at any point in the past. Midway through the session, we pause briefly to test understanding. When asked, which factor most often determines post-intervention stability, the correct answer is going to be domestic legitimacy. When asked why oil-rich states track foreign involvement, the key answer is strategic leverage and market stability. When asked which framework explains repeated U.S. involvement in the Western Hemisphere, the answer is going to be the Roosevelt Corollary. When asked why foreign-backed governments struggle, the answer is going to be proxy perception. When asked what increases reputational risk today, the answer is going to be social media and instant information. These are exactly the types of connections the FSOT or the FSOT is designed to test. As we approach the end of the session, as I promised, it's not going to be an extremely long one, but I do want to open it up for discussion. It is important to understand what history suggests can reduce backlash, even if it cannot eliminate it. Actions tend to be perceived as more legitimate when they are narrowly defined, legally justified, and limited in duration, and accompanied by visible concern for civilians. Multilateral coordination, even symbolic, can also reduce perceptions of unilateral coercion. The absence of these factors almost guarantees instability. Venezuela matters to the United States because of its energy, geography, security, and global power competition. History often shows that interventions lacking legitimacy, institutional strength, and clear limits often produce instability despite short-term success. If you cannot recognize that pattern, you are well prepared. If you can recognize that pattern, you are well prepared for the job knowledge section of the FSOT. A key takeaway here is that, exactly what I just shared. And I feel like that was a really strong takeaway. So when you study current events, as they do happen and happen often, regardless if it's in the United States or internationally, especially with world news, do not ask whether you agree with them. Ask what they resemble, what interests are involved, and what history suggests is likely to follow. That is how diplomats think, and that is how the FSOT is written. So this is, I think, the best way to study the current events. There's a lot of news articles and news platforms that do have like little text messages and things like little pop-ups that can show on your screen as far as like what's happening in real time. I think, just downloading those apps, even if you don't need to pay for them as well. I mean, a lot of times the headlines will just come up. So just to kind of know what is happening, one of the free platforms will probably report on it. I think where you get your news matters because it's going to be written through a lens. Also, speaking of, what's written, I also want to emphasize that the importance of what we witnessed and what we're reading and what we're seeing here recently, just as a reminder that history is often written by the winners. And I want us to make sure that we're on the right side of history when we're remembering, this is what we saw, this is what we felt. But what we saw and what we know, that's what's going to be reported, and that's what's going to be in the books. That's what's going to be on the test. And we want to make sure that we're leaning on that, especially as it pertains to the U.S. interest. So I think that will conclude us here in this step. So just to kind of remind of what happens next with us in this group. January 12th, how U.S. diplomacy sends ripple effects across the world, which I think, again, with current events, it's a very timely one. What happens in the next up? But again, we're just going to work on the facts. So approaching Arabic is going to be our first language learning session. That's going to be on the Tuesday following, on the 12th. We're going to be off that following week with MLK. And then we're going to end the month with our talk with the U.S. Ambassador Tom Armbruster, Diplomatic Chain Reactions, Nuclear Legacies, Russia, and the Long Arc of U.S. Diplomacy. If you are interested in leading a study session, or if you have any thoughts about this week's study session, please do email me at travis@thefsot.com. I do appreciate you for attending this session. Also, plug, if you are looking for a resource that is based on current practices and current studies that may not be as outdated, please do take advantage of the FSOT.com. If you're watching this somewhere else and you have your phone available, you can scan the QR code, or you can just go to the FSOT.com, which I think is becoming one of the best places to prepare for the FSOT, the FSOT.com. And that is tonight's presentation. I'm going to stop recording so we can just talk.